What I do for money is Uber driving. I'm curious to know whether there are any other 84-year-old drivers.
I'm 82 years old, and I wish I could...
In America, a lifetime of work once came with the promise of a secure retirement. Work hard, stay loyal, save your money, and one day you would finally get to retire. But now that promise is on the verge of falling apart. A job you have had for decades can suddenly disappear. And if that happens after age 50, a lot of people can find themselves stuck in the worst possible place, too young to live off retirement savings, but seen by the job market as too old to start over. What happens when experience and loyalty are no longer enough while retirement keeps moving further out of reach? Today, I want you to hear directly from the people going through this and find out what pushed them into this situation. And even more troubling, people who still have jobs are not necessarily safe from it either. Because this is no longer just a story about people over 50. Behind it is a much bigger shift in how Americans work, build stability, and prepare for old age. And no matter where you are in your career, what is happening right now may be closer to your own future than you think. Decades of dedication still could not save their jobs. Let me put this plainly. When you think about layoffs, you may still assume that people who perform well, have seniority, and bring a lot of experience are safer. That if you work hard enough, stay loyal enough, and have given years of your life to a company, then at the very least your position should be harder to replace. That is the belief a lot of people carry throughout their careers. Do your job well, and stability will eventually come. But this story shows just how different things can turn out.
He gave that company 22 years, then one Tuesday they called it a restructuring, eliminated his position, and quietly handed his work to two 20-somethings at half his salary combined. This is the Friday Firing Files, and yes, this is a composite, but the pattern is all too real.
22 years on the job, and then one day the position disappears under a very familiar name, restructuring. The work is then handed off to younger employees who cost less. 22 years is enough time for someone to know a job inside and out. They know which systems tend to fail, which customers are difficult, and which procedures look great on paper, but simply do not work in the real world. There is a good chance they were the ones who trained the people who came after them. But long seniority does not come with a guarantee of safety. Loyalty sounds dependable until the day the company needs to cut costs. When they need you to stay late, take on extra work, or train someone new. You hear the word team all the time. But when the budget needs to come down, nobody opens a spreadsheet and adds another line saying, "This person gave us 20 years, keep them." My neighbor once told me an even more frustrating story. She was 61 and had worked at the same place for 36 years. The owner sold the business and the new owner did not want to keep the old staff. But they still wanted her to stay long enough to train the person who would replace her. 36 years of experience. In the end, what they wanted to keep was not her, it was what she knew. And this is not the kind of instability that only happens to people who are just entering the workforce. Listen to Jay Christ.
Christ spent his career in a higher echelon of the printing industry than this. For almost 30 years, Christ was a manager at printing giant R.R. Donnelley.
I've always supervised, always managed, and there was part of me like, I'll be one of those guys that retires here.
No such luck. He was laid off in 2016. His plans derailed.
Nearly 30 years in the printing industry, including time as a manager, and he simply thought he would be one of the people who retired right there at that company. Then the company restructured. And that was it. The reality is a lot of workers over 50 are ending up in exactly this situation. They are not being pushed out at the beginning of their careers. They are being pushed out after spending 20 or 30 years becoming the person who knows the job better than almost anyone else. And this is where the problem gets even more uncomfortable. The longer you work, the higher your pay usually becomes. Your benefits get better. Your title gets better. Those are exactly the things workers have always been told they should work toward. But when a company starts looking closely at costs, those very accomplishments can make a long-time employee more expensive to keep. Experience is hard to put into an Excel box. Salary is very easy. I am not saying that every worker over 50 who gets laid off is being let go because of age or because the company wants to replace them with someone younger. But one thing is very clear, 20 years, 30 years, or even longer, it's no longer a guarantee that you will make it all the way to the end at the place where you spent nearly your entire career. If you are over 50, this is the warning for you. Do not confuse a long career with long-term security. You may be doing well today, you may be trusted today, but a single restructuring decision can still change everything. And when that happens, the question is no longer what the company did to you. The question is, starting tomorrow, how are you going to keep your plans from falling apart? The financial fallout and a retirement plan falling apart. There is one thing very few people account for when they are preparing for retirement money, set aside for old age, may end up getting pulled back out just to keep life going today. You are 58 years old. You already have a pretty clear number in mind, work a few more years to keep contributing to your 401k, pay down some debt, and only then start living on what you have saved. The plan sounds perfectly reasonable, until the income suddenly stops.
Don't immediately file for Social Security. Don't rush to roll over your 401k account, and don't accept the first job offer out of fear. And really, just don't declare early retirement just because that feels easier. This moment, I know it feels urgent. Financially, it usually isn't, but you need clarity before you need action.
Lay it. Pay attention to the things that come up right after that shock Social Security, a 401k, a new job. This is where everything starts turning upside down. Money that was supposed to be there 5 or 10 years from now suddenly has to answer this month's problems. Should you pull money out of retirement? Should you start taking benefits early? Or do you have to take whatever job you can get just to avoid touching the money you have built up? Retirement rarely falls apart because of one single hit. Usually it has been getting worn down long before that. Higher housing costs, more expensive insurance, rising medical bills, kids who still need help, aging parents who need care, a car repair and illness, a few months of putting more on the credit card than you expected. Everything can still work as long as that paycheck keeps coming in. Then that income disappears. And this is where it really hurts. The final years of a career are exactly the years people can least afford to lose. This is usually when they're trying to put more into retirement, finish paying off the mortgage-reduced debt, and give their savings more time to grow. Losing a year or two at age 30 still leaves plenty of time to make it up. But at age 60, the clock does not magically give you another 15 years just because your plan hit a problem.
Harder for folks to land on their feet. Meanwhile, those with more traditional, transferable roles, like management, might have a slightly smoother path forward. But let's be clear. No matter where you've worked or how close you are to retirement, getting laid off can feel like a gut punch, especially if you're just a few years away from hanging it up.
When you're only a few years away from retirement, one interruption in income can force you to redo the entire calculation. Before you were asking, should I retire at 65 or 67? Now the question becomes, do I still have enough money to make it until then? It is only a few words different, but the life behind that question is completely different. You may want to leave your 401k alone, but today's bills do not care that the money was meant for the year 2035. You may want to wait longer before claiming Social Security, but groceries, medication, and insurance still come due on time. At that point, the future can very easily become something you start spending early. And this does not only happen to people who never prepared. Someone can save consistently for years and still run in trouble if the shock comes at exactly the wrong time. Your health can change. An industry can shrink. Finding another job can take much longer than expected. A plan that worked just fine under normal conditions can suddenly become very fragile when several assumptions stop being true at the same time. This is also when people start seeing the difference between having retirement money and having enough time to leave it untouched. An account that still looks pretty solid on paper can change very quickly if it suddenly has to carry you through another year with no income. Because once money meant for old age has to start rescuing the present, the retirement plan is no longer following the old schedule. But the problem does not stop with money. A lot of people are still perfectly capable of working, still have valuable skills, and still have decades of experience. The problem is when they go back into the job market, the very things that once helped them move forward can start working against them. Over 50, too much experience can cost you opportunities.
Struggling to land a job is super embarrassing. That's how a lot of senior professionals feel because you've done everything right. You've worked really hard. You have the experience. You have big names on your resume. You've done everything you've been told to be successful. So why does it feel so hard to land your next role right now? The system failed you. You were sold a false.
This woman is 52 years old. She has years of experience, and her resume is far from weak, but she has sent out a huge number of applications and barely gotten any response. Eventually, someone even advised her to remove some of her experience from her resume so she would look younger. And what if I told you that getting laid off is not even the hardest part? The harder part starts right after that, finding a new job. You still have all the same skills. Whatever you were capable of doing last month, you can still do today. You do not wake up after your 55th birthday and suddenly forget how to do your job, but the market may start looking at you differently. Your entire career, you were told to keep learning, do more, take on more responsibility, and build an impressive resume. 20 or 30 years later, that same resume can leave you wondering, should I start taking things off? It sounds pretty ridiculous. But that is the situation a lot of people are facing. You send out 10, then 20 applications a day. You tailor every resume to the position. You rewrite your summary, cut some of your older experience, and remove your graduation year so your age is less obvious. You replace outdated wording with more modern language. You learn new software just so you can put the name of that tool on your resume. Then you wait. This is where a lot of older workers run into an invisible wall. Nobody calls you and says you are too old. No employer has to come right out and say your previous salary makes them nervous. Instead, you get silence automated rejection emails or an interview that seems to go really well and then never leads to another round. And then you get a rejection that sounds very polite. You have too much experience for this position. I have to say, this is one of the most confusing things about the job market today. When you are young, you get rejected because you do not have enough experience. Then after spending 2 decades building that experience, you can get rejected because you have too much of it. So how much experience is actually the right amount? Someone who has managed teams, spent years in a specialized field, or earned a high salary usually comes with a long professional history. An employer may look at that and think the candidate will want more money, will have a hard time accepting a lower title, or will leave as soon as something better comes along. You say you are willing to take a less money. They worry you will not stay long. You apply one level down. They say you are overqualified. You apply at your level. The competition is intense.
Ageism is 100% real on the job search. This 52-year-old woman pictured above did a post about her struggles to find a job in the UK. She mentioned applying to thousands of jobs with zero response. She even had friends and family tell her that she should take years of experience off her resume in order to appear younger to get more job opportunities. This isn't a one-off.
Even senior candidates with experience and big names on their resumes are still struggling to find their next position. Now, your resume is not just competing with other people. It also has to get through screening systems, keywords, hundreds of other applications, and sometimes automated tools before it ever reaches a real recruiter. Sometimes the whole process almost sounds like a joke. Machines help job seekers send out applications by the hundreds. Companies use machines to reject applications by the hundreds, and workers sit there staring at their phones waiting for a call. Someone can spend 25 years building a career. The system can pass over that resume in a matter of seconds. I think after a few months of this, it starts to feel like a personal recession. First you lose the job, then the title, then your salary expectations start dropping. You begin applying for positions you would not even have considered a few years earlier. Eventually the goal is no longer to move up. You just want to find one place willing to open the door. Your whole career was built by moving up. Then when you have to look for work again, a lot of people have to learn how to make themselves look smaller. Getting laid off only happens once. But the feeling of being rejected can come back every morning when you open your inbox and still see nothing. And at that point, this is no longer about finding a better job. It becomes a negotiation and over how much of what a worker spent a lifetime building they have to give up before the market is willing to let them back in. Then another contradiction appears. A lot of people still cannot afford to retire, but the new job is not good enough to get them back to the life they had before. That is when they start getting stuck in the middle, unable to stop working, but also finding it very hard to get back to where they used to be. Retirement is getting further out of reach for people who cannot afford to stop working. What if I told you that reaching retirement age does not necessarily mean you actually get to retire? Take a look at this man.
Why not? How old are you, may I ask?
I'm just right around the corner from 84.
84. Why are you still working at this age?
Yeah, it became necessary. The bills kept going up and up and up and up, and what little retirement I had wasn't enough, so been through...
He is nearly 84 years old and still working because the bills keep going up, while the money he has for retirement is not enough. At that age, most people think work should already be behind them. But for him, the workday is not over yet. Not because he wants to start a new career, simply because his finances will not allow him to stop. And this is where we need to make a very clear distinction. Some people over 70 still enjoy working. They are healthy, they like being around people, and they like having a routine. There is nothing wrong with that. But someone who keeps working because they enjoy it is completely different from someone who keeps working because they will not have enough money if they stop. One is a choice, the other is a necessity. And this does not only happen to people who never retired in the first place. Some people leave the workforce only to eventually have to come back.
Food, housing, and healthcare. For some, like 68-year-old Lynn Carroll in Xenia, returning to work was necessary to support her family and cover expenses.
This woman is 68 years old. She went back to work as food housing and healthcare costs went up while her family still needed her financial support. This is where the whole idea of retirement starts to change. It is no longer about working until a certain age and then stopping. It can turn to a cycle retire. Watch the money disappear too quickly, then go back to work. And I think this is where a lot of people are very quick to judge. They see someone over 70 still working and say they should have saved better. Yes, some people did not prepare well financially. Some earned decent money, but did not save. That is real. But what about someone who worked a low-paying job for years? Someone who had medical expenses? Someone who had to care for aging parents? Someone who lost a spouse? Someone who had to support their children longer than expected? If there is almost nothing left after paying for housing, food, medication, and insurance, then telling someone to just save more is very easy to say. The reality is that a lot of people reach retirement age and still have to take part-time jobs, hourly work, or positions far below the kind of work they used to do. At that point, they are no longer working to move up. They are working just to keep this month from going into the red. And that is a very big difference. There is nothing concerning about a 70-year-old who keeps working because they love their job. But when a 70-year-old still has to stand for 8 hours a day simply because staying home would leave them without enough money to live, that is no longer what retirement is supposed to look like. And as more older people find themselves unable to leave the workforce, the problem does not stop with the individual. The people at the top cannot leave, the people in the middle have a harder time moving up, and younger workers have a harder time getting into positions that normally would have opened up over time. Loyalty no longer buys stability. At this point, I think we have to be fair about one thing. Layoffs do not only hurt the people who lose their jobs. The people who stay get pulled into the fallout too, just in ways that are harder to see. A friend once told me that after a round of cuts, his department lost 3 people, but the workload barely changed. At first, everyone thought they just had to push through for a few weeks. Then a few weeks turned into a few months. One person took on more clients. Another took over the reporting too. Someone else had to keep doing their old job while also training new employees. Eventually, nobody even called it temporary anymore. The extra work simply became their new job. This is something that is very easy to miss in restructuring announcements. A company cutting 10% of its staff does not mean 10% of the customer's emails or problems suddenly disappear too. If the work is still there, somebody has to do it. And now I understand why some employees make it through a round of layoffs and still do not feel lucky. They still have a job, but there is more work and more pressure and less time off. Sometimes the pay stays the same while the responsibilities of 2 positions get pushed onto one person. Then the mood in the office starts changing too. The person sitting next to you yesterday may be gone from the employee list today. Maybe that person was good at the job, had years of experience, and might even have been the one who trained you. After seeing that happen a few times, it gets very hard to keep believing that hard work and loyalty will keep you safe. People start updating their resumes, more often paying attention to who else is hiring and thinking more carefully before taking on extra responsibilities without getting anything more in return. Loyalty still has value, but it is no longer insurance. Companies can also lose something that is very hard to buy back, the experience of people who have been there for decades. A training manual can show a new employee what steps to follow, but someone who has been doing the job for 20 years knows what to do when those steps stop working. They know how to talk to certain customers and which machine is about to have a problem when it starts making a strange sound, and which process looks fine on paper but always gets stuck in the same place in real life. Cutting someone like that can happen in a single meeting. Replacing 20 years of experience does not happen nearly as fast. New employees lose the person who used to guide them. The people who stay have to do their own jobs while also fixing problems the former employee used to handle almost automatically. Customers wait longer. Even small tasks start taking more time. Then the benefits of the people who still have jobs start getting affected too. Fewer people means it is harder to cover for each other when someone takes time off. There is less time for training, and there are fewer chances for an employee to gradually learn the job above them before moving up. At this point, a layoff has gone far beyond the person who got the notice. One person loses a job. 3 other people take on more work. A younger employee loses a mentor. The whole team starts looking around and wondering who will be next, and that is when the relationship with the company starts to change. If a business can change its plans very quickly when conditions change, workers start realizing they need a plan of their own too. The veterans leave. The people in the middle carry more of the load. Younger workers lose the chance to learn from the people who came before them, and little by little the connections between generations across a career start disappearing. America's career ladder is stuck at every level. After all of this, what happens when young people have a hard time getting in, people in the middle have a hard time moving up? Experienced workers can still get pushed out, and people who have reached retirement age still cannot afford to leave. And it is getting very hard to call all of this just a few cases of bad luck. In the past, the career path was at least fairly easy to understand. Young people started with basics jobs, learned from the people ahead of them, and gradually took on more responsibility. People in the middle moved into management. Veteran workers passed down what they knew. Eventually, they retired and the seat above opened up for the next person. You did not have to get rich right away. You just needed there to be another step you could move up to. But now, even that first step is starting to get crowded. Young people need a job to get experience, but a lot of entry-level jobs already want them to have experience. And now there is artificial intelligence too. Anthropic's CEO has warned that AIs could wipe out a large share of entry-level office jobs over the next few years. At first that sounds like it is only a problem for young people. Not really. If the work that used to go to new employees gets handed over to software, where are they supposed to learn the job? Nobody skips those early years and then suddenly becomes experienced a few years later. Move up another step, and middle-aged workers are running into problems too. Companies combine departments, cut middle management, and have one person doing the work of two. You perform better, take on more work, and gain more experience. However, the next position may already be gone. Further up, veteran workers can get cut before they have a chance to pass on everything they know. The new person has barely had time to learn before the experienced worker is already gone. The people in the middle lose a chance to move up while also taking on more work. Then at the other end, some people who have already reached retirement age still have to keep working. And I do not like the way people turn this into older workers are taking jobs away from younger workers. A lot of older people want to retire too. They just cannot afford to leave yet. So younger workers at the bottom have a hard time getting in, people in the middle look up and see fewer seats. Long-time workers can still get pushed out, and older workers may not be able to leave. If you are anywhere along that path, this affects you. Because a stable job used to be how a family increased its income, bought a home, raised children, built wealth, and eventually made it to old age. When every step along that path starts getting blocked at the same time, maybe the problem is no longer about just one generation. Something about the way America moves a person from their first job all the way to retirement is no longer working the way it used to. Long-term risks and how to protect yourself in a less certain job market. It is hard for me to end this video with the earlier sections when there is still one thing I have not said. Maybe the biggest problem is not who loses a job today, but that more and more people are heading into the future with too little financial cushion to absorb a shock. I do not think you need to live in fear, but I do think it is time to let go of one pretty dangerous assumption, that if you just work hard long enough, the rest of your life will somehow take care of itself. What matters more now is knowing how solid your position really is. Do you know the minimum your household needs every month? If one source of income disappears, do you know what you would cut first? Is your home costing too much compared with what you earn now? Is there any debt that would leave you unable to adjust if something went wrong? Those are not comfortable questions, but they are a lot more useful than telling yourself that I am probably still fine. And there's one more thing I want to say that a lot of people do not realize until it is too late. Do not let every plan for your later years depend on one single scenario, one house, one source of income, one pool of savings, one retirement date. If everything only works when life goes exactly the way you expect, that is not a solid plan. It is just a plan that has never been tested. The closer you get to retirement, the most valuable thing is not the feeling of certainty. It is the ability to adjust when things do not go according to plan. And this is also when you need to be careful with promises that sound too good to be true. Losing a job, running short on money, being afraid of getting older, those three things are enough to make anyone want to grab onto a quick way out. But the moment you are most scared is also the moment when it is easiest to lose even more. Keep your living costs under control. Keep enough of a cushion so you do not have to make decisions in a panic. And most importantly, do not build your entire retirement around the assumption that the future will unfold exactly the way you planned. Because maybe the scariest thing is not that the plan changes. It is that you only have one plan. In the end, what we have just seen may no longer be a temporary problem in the job market. And is this part of a deeper change in how Americans build careers and retire, or is age causing some workers to be hit harder than others? Gaps in savings, longer life expectancy, and uncertainty about future benefits are forcing a lot of people to rethink what retirement really means. And I want to ask you this: if your career changed tomorrow, could your plan for the rest of your life change with it? Do not be afraid to share your story below. We will read every one. This channel was created so workers' experiences do not get overlooked, and so we can better understand what is really changing. Subscribe to the channel. We will keep digging into the stories that big numbers often miss before they become your problem too.